Hello, my name is Talan Godfrey and I'm a real gang stalking victim. I'm a real targeted individual. So this video is going to go and feature more of COINTELPRO. Now this video talks about COINTELPRO with private security firms. See, when they do this gang stalking, when they do this harassment campaign, okay, first of all, let's bring it up. Okay, let's go to Popular Mechanics Magazine. I do this all the time. Popular Mechanics Magazine, Psychoelectronic Weapons Effects. There it is. Gang stalking had nothing to do with religion or spirituality. Gang stalking had nothing to do with the supernatural, the paranormal, or the metaphysical. Anybody talking about that, anybody talking about gang stalking, that chosen one, or that gang stalking, that fucking witchcraft, that's not what gang stalking is. This is gang stalking. They call it different names than gang stalking, but this is Psychoelectronic Weapons Effects, Popular Mechanics Magazine, Psychoelectronic Weapons Effects. This doesn't explain everything or point out everything that you will experience as a real gang stalking victim, but it does talk about a lot of the stuff that you will experience as a gang stalking victim, and you can give this article to your friends, your families, and your potential allies, proving that gang stalking is real, okay? Now, a lot of these people are complaining about harassment campaigns and actual gang stalking by private security firms and by corrupt private investigators. I mean, Brian too talked about this back in the day. A whole bunch of people talked about this shit. Some people say that gang stalking and these other forms of harassment campaigns are basically a new COINTELPRO, okay? New COINTELPRO. And I spelled that wrong. New COINTELPRO. Alright? The journalist George Webb talked about this, but what I'm going to talk about is we all know FBI or no real FBI investigated or infiltrated Black Lives Matter, because Black Lives Matter protest was promoted by the establishment. Anyway, okay, let's see what I'm talking about. Okay, there it is right here. This is a video that you're going to be watching right here, okay? Now, it's going to talk about this certain private security firm right here, okay? This is a really old video, but you paid attention to the stuff that I've been talking about. I think this is one by Betty Davis or Betty Page. I think it was Betty Davis. Betty Davis hired corrupt private investigators to do her dirty work, especially against her ex-husband. So I got being zapped in the hand, zapped in the lips, and I'm getting hit in the documentary. I'm getting hit in the side again. It's an old Betty Davis documentary from the 90s, like VH1 the 90s or whatever. And she used a private investigator to get dirt on her ex-husband, which we all know that's true. Well, hold on. Another woman doing that nasty kind of thing, which we all know is true. Okay, they do it. Now let's go to C911, CBS News, New York. Revenge for hire. Okay. So anybody talking about that stupid chosen one, ignore them, they're not talking.
Typically associated with the sale of roses, chocolate, and lingerie.
But as CBS 2's Alice Gaynor shows us, it is the business of revenge that's experiencing a big boost lately.
You try to find one person who hasn't gotten really satisfying revenge and not found.
Okay.
And unfairly dumped, canned, or disrespected. And they do it in a variety of ways, from bombarding your offender with unrelenting, menacing text or phone calls, to putting an ad in the paper about their alleged indiscretions, or much, much worse. Nefarious Jobs offers 9 packages aimed, the company advertises, at making the lives of your enemies hell. For $3,000, the Eviscerator focuses on ruining one facet of the person's life, like her marriage. And then there's Total Annihilation, which for $10,000 does exactly as the name suggests.
Well, when people feel like they're getting harmed or even socially rejected, the natural instinct is to want to right a wrong.
Psychologist Dr. Barbara Greenberg says the act of revenge actually activates the pleasure center of the brain.
It's like
Okay,
taking
so
drugs.
I don't know why that popped
You
up,
get that
but
high.
anyway.
We gave people a voodoo.
So it feels like somebody been messing with this mouse because this mouse is really sensitive. But I bet you if you brought up gang stalking to that psychologist, even though this is a really old video, she would say that you're mentally ill. Okay. But anyway, so we know about these harassment campaigns. This dude is running a harassment campaign on CBS News, New York, okay? And we know about the harassment campaign in this video, Dontavius, okay, by Dontavius. That's why YouTube is working with somebody. Somebody is working with YouTube to censor this video. If this video gets seen by too many effing people, YouTube will censor this video and you won't be able to see it on any gang stalking tag. Either gang stalking one word or gang stalking two-word tag. It will completely disappear. Completely disappear, okay? And you can see me on the gang stalking two-word tag. But leaving Dr. Grande, leaving this stupid Vice video up and this other Vice video, they fine, okay? Everybody else get the shadow ban and the censorship. So here it is. We're going to go back to this video right here. Actually, I'm going to go to my website. Let's go to Real Talan Godfrey. I'm going to show you another harassment campaign. See, the people who are doing these harassment campaigns really want you to be labeled as mentally ill, and that gang stalking itself. You want to call it gang stalking, you want to call it organized harassment, that's all you. You can do whatever you want. But these people want you to be labeled as a mentally ill, and this gang stalking, organized stalking is just a conspiracy theory because they know that this shit is real. They know that this shit is real and this shit's illegal. Okay, they know it. They know it. That's why they censor my videos. But anybody talking about Jesus and gang stalking, they get a pass. Anybody talking about gang stalking and witchcraft, they get to have their videos promoted. Anybody talking about gang stalking and the chosen one, their videos get promoted. And everybody knows that chosen one shit is the Indigo Child prophecy rebranded. Okay, anybody else talks about real gang stalking victims, real gang stalking, the techniques, the tactics that we know of? Cause I'm pretty sure there's a lot to gang stalking, including the direct energy weapons and the mind control technology. They don't want coming out, and a lot of people ain't talking. So what we do know of, they don't even want you talking about that. They want you to think that gang stalking, like a demon, is gang stalking you. See, the freaking lawyer talked about this stuff back in this gang stalking with direct energy weapons and mind control back in the year 2000. Okay, 24 years ago, and people still to this very day don't want you talking about real gang stalking. Close to 30 years later. Okay, so let's find my video real quick. This is another harassment campaign. I did a video. Oh, what the fuck is going on here? I did a video talking about it. It's the Frito-Lay gang stalking. It's the Frito-Lay. I might. This is effing me over.
For some strange reason, and I'm not friends with this dude. But this is the same dude who has been harassing me, but not out on the bridge.
Can I take your picture?
This is the dude.
Yeah, they send these homeless people after you. Okay.
Dude that's been harassing me on the
Loser
bridge,
homeless
and then
people.
when I was
I haven't seen him in a while. That's because I recorded him. They hate your camera. Unless they're like really criminal and they're on drugs, on mind control, they really hate your camera. But let's go to Frito Lay stalking. I think it was done by a perfect, there it is. See? You see? They're going to put you. They're going to start spying on you. They're going to start harassing you. They're going to do a whole bunch of weird shit, okay? Okay? See, Frito-Lay stalking scandal right here. Was he schizophrenic? Was he mentally ill? Was he paranoid? Did the aliens record this man and his family? No. They sent these private investigators to investigate this dude and see if he was doing insurance fraud. Okay, stop the camera. See, they don't want people. See, that's why they don't want you to talk about gang stalking, because this gang stalking is organized stalking. One, gang stalking is illegal. Two, there's money behind it. Now, I'm pretty sure that when it comes to cases of you being investigated for insurance fraud, I'm pretty sure they can, find some way to justify that. But the gang stalking that I experienced under Popular Mechanics Magazine, psychoelectronic weapons effects, no, that shit's illegal. Period. They coming into your house or your apartment or your condo, they don't have the right to do it. It's illegal. It's a crime. But this gang stalking keeps continuing because you go on YouTube, everybody talking about some damn witchcraft, okay? These people, or they were talking about some damn chosen one. They were talking about some damn tarot cards. They're intentionally, screwing my channel over, screwing Dontavia's video over, screwing everybody who talks about gang stalking through a legal and scientific lens. We are getting fucked over. Period. While the bullshit stays. There's gang stalking and narcissism, not real. Gang stalking and spiritual gang stalking, demonic gang stalking and semen retention, gang stalking in the astral plane. All that shit's fake, phony. Gang stalking and tarot cards. All that shit, gang stalking and a fucking chosen one, like I said earlier. All that shit's fake. All of it's fake. But it's a psychological operation campaign to get you messed up. So anyway, I'm not gonna make this video too long, but I don't know what's going on with my mouse. It's been messed up for a while, but you can see it right here. CBS News, New York. They talking about it, but you're supposed to be a conspiracy theorist. You're supposed to be crazy when you bring up gang stalking. Anyway, I don't know all the technology behind gang stalking, but there's a lot. But anyway, let's bring back to the video. This video right here is private security firm Tiger Swan. Okay, whatever is going on with this mouse, I didn't mess with it. Somebody messed with it. But here it is right here, and I'm gonna play a little bit of it, and that's it. And I'm not saying that everybody who was protesting for or against the pipeline was completely clean and innocent and a child of God. No, I'm not saying that at all. What's going on with this? What's going on here? To me, it's going on with this computer. Yeah, they mess with my computers. But something is going on with this computer. Okay, shut it down. Shit. I'll play a little bit of it. I didn't ask for that. Come on.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
Now,
as we turn to part 2 of our conversation with...
Okay, back in the day, I liked Democracy Now!, but they let their leftist freak flag fly. So no, I don't like them anymore. Okay. You'd be surprised how many people during the war on terror, the war against terror, you get a whole bunch of these leftists. Now leftists were liberal, but now they just turn completely leftist. They turn completely communist.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As we turn to part 2 of our conversation with Antonia Juhas, oil and energy journalist, her latest piece is headlined Paramilitary Security Tracked and Targeted No-DAPL Activists as Jihadists, Doc Show. It appears in news outlets Grist and Reveal. Antonia Juhas is author of Black Tide, The Devastating Impact of the Gulf Oil Spill, and The Tyranny of Oil, the World's Most Powerful Industry, and What We Must Do to Stop It. In part 1 of our discussion, Antonia, you laid out Tiger Swan, and I'm wondering if you can briefly tell us what this company is and how they ended up being hired by Energy Transfer Partners, which owns the Dakota Access Pipeline, to surveil and monitor the indigenous resistance to the pipeline.
Okay, so I'm gonna put this on pause. I'm not
Tiger
saying...
Swan was founded around 2007. That date isn't entirely clear.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop it. I'm gonna stop it.
Delta.
God damn. Anyway, so I'm not saying that everybody involved in that, both sides were completely clean and innocent. I'm not saying that. I'm pretty sure there were dirty birds on both sides, bad actors on both sides. But you want to realize when it comes to the gang stalking that there is some similarities right now. That this gang stalking shit has nothing to do with no witchcraft, but no chosen one. Gang stalking had nothing to do with religion or spirituality. Gang stalking had nothing to do with the supernatural, the paranormal, or the metaphysical. Okay? The more you look at these private investigator companies, the more you look at these corrupt private security firms, you start seeing certain patterns. Gang stalking is COINTELPRO on steroids. Gang stalking is MK Ultra on steroids. Popular Mechanics Magazine, Psychoelectronic Weapons Effects. Okay, I'm going to play the video straight up. Okay, so you guys can enjoy it because I don't want to watch that all over again. All right.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As we turn to part 2 of our conversation with Antonia Juhas, oil and energy journalist, her latest piece is headlined, Paramilitary Security Tracked and Targeted No-DAPL Activists as Jihadists, Doc Show. It appears in the news outlets Grist and Reveal. Antonia Juhas is author of Black Tide, The Devastating Impact of the Gulf Oil Spill, and The Tyranny of Oil, the world's most powerful industry, and what we must do to stop it. In part 1 of our discussion, Antonia, you laid out Tiger Swan, and I'm wondering if you can briefly tell us what this company is and how they ended up being hired by Energy Transfer Partners, which owns the Dakota Access Pipeline, to surveil and monitor the indigenous resistance to the pipeline.
Tiger Swan was founded around 2007. That date isn't entirely clear, by a just retired Delta Force 25-year Army veteran, James Reese. Reese has ties with Blackwater. For example, we know that in 2008, he worked for Blackwater. There's a State Department contract demonstrating that he had worked for Blackwater at that time. He has said that he advised Blackwater as well. And then Blackwater financed the first training facility that Tiger Swan set up in North Carolina to train military, law enforcement, and some civilians in tactics that it had developed working as a private military government contractor, particularly in Iraq and Afghanistan, on a multitude of contracts for years with State Department, DOD, Homeland Security, in theater, providing security in Iraq and Afghanistan. Then Reese also started working in 2007 and turning Tiger Swan's attention, more like in 2011, to domestic private security for corporations, and came on to be hired by Energy Transfer Partners to oversee all security on the Dakota Access Pipeline starting last year in September, and taking over after the use of dogs by private security against water protectors. And what we know is that Tiger Swan set up this sophisticated counterintelligence program, including surveillance, infiltration, and manipulation, intentional manipulation of protesters, and that those operations encompassed all 4 states of the Dakota Access Pipeline, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Illinois, as well as Texas, where Energy Transfer Partners is based, but that these activities are ongoing. So also in Pennsylvania at a new pipeline camp, also in South Dakota at a new pipeline resistance camp, and also the reach of Tiger Swan's activities revealed in the daily situation reports that were leaked, that Grist was leaked. included their monitoring, for example, a protest in Ohio that had been posted by the Unitarian Universalist Church and that involved a bunch. I interviewed the woman who's named in the report, who also happens to be a reading tutor, and it was people walking around on the street, with signs in Akron, Ohio, and that ended up in Tiger Swan's, surveillance web. Also in the documents, in addition to focusing what are really likely what would be very illegal, are likely illegal activities if they were conducted by law enforcement, so unconstitutional activities were they to be committed by law enforcement. We also see Tiger Swan using, in its own words, surveillance and other operations on those loosely affiliated with the protests. So these are activists in Chicago protesting against, quote, the election of Donald Trump. It was a very, very broad net, ongoing net, that this paramilitary force was employed by Energy Transfer Partners to oversee in opposition, to stop opposition to an oil pipeline.
So what about the issue of legality? You say in your piece, U.S. laws regarding surveillance and other counterintelligence tactics don't appear to specifically govern Tiger Swan. Why?
This raised a number of serious concerns with legal scholars I spoke with, as well as the ACLU, the National Lawyers Guild, who's representing water protectors in the 800 people who were arrested over the course of this resistance movement. So basically, we did have a period of time where our laws focused on private security forces working for corporations. This was the era of the Pinkertons, when we had corporations using thugs to beat up unionizing, basically. Well, the country's memory went pretty far afield after that, and now we basically don't have laws for private security. The way we think about private security companies in the United States is, if you think about the mall cop, like the security guy at Walmart who doesn't have a gun and is just there. That's what our laws think about when we think about private security, which means we basically have very few. They vary dramatically by state. The enforcement is, can be almost nil, and there's no federal, almost no federal restrictions. So this is an area that you now have a private paramilitary security force used to operating in war zones. That's what those laws are. So that's who's operating here. And they're doing things that, again, if law enforcement did them, they would be unconstitutional, against the right to freedom of association, free speech, religious affiliation. Tiger Swan very clearly focused on, Palestinians, people it described as Islamicists who were there. Black Lives Matter. I have a very telling story, Black people, and Black Lives Matter is specifically named. And of course, the Native American community. There's one very telling story, however, of a young woman who was doing what she described to me as self-defense classes for women and femme folk at the camps, very small groups of people. And by looking at the dates and the descriptions, she's sure about a story that then got reported by Tiger Swan that reported, quote, unidentified member of the Black Panther Party is conducting hand-to-hand combat training in the camp. And she said to me, I'm sure that's me based on what else was going on at the camp. And that I might look, I do work with communities of color in Chicago, and she's from Chicago, where they also, Tiger Swan spent a lot of time paying attention to activities in Chicago. And she said, I'm sure that's me. That's not what I was doing, but that's what Tiger Swan reported. And again, that helped facilitate their desire. And there was a comment in a Tiger Swan report that said, law enforcement isn't acting hard enough. The fines aren't high enough on arrestees, and they're not arresting enough people. And so what's possible is that these reports were an attempt to get law enforcement to act more aggressively, which of course it did in dramatic fashion, with many charges of excessive force, with, again, a very militarized response, in the fields of North Dakota. And it's important to look at what, if any, role Tiger Swan had in that.
Can you talk about the footage you got of Tiger Swan training video showing soldiers how to do what's called clearing a room? The company's co-founder and chair, retired Lieutenant Colonel Jim Reese, a veteran of the Army's elite Delta Force, the Delta Force best known for tracking bin Laden.
There's a lot of footage of training that Tiger Swan does at its facility, again, the facility that was financed by Blackwater in North Carolina. And this is a training facility for military, law enforcement, and also civilians. And that footage is, a theoretical home, probably in Iraq, and we see the soldiers, zooming in and immediately killing everybody, or what seems to be the likely outcome would be, you go in and everybody's dead. And this is the type of training that Tiger Swan performs, and this is their mindset. And one of the things I quote in my story is actually a Harvard University study that pulled together a number of chiefs of police to look at scenarios involving private security. And one of the scenarios that they were given was, what if you've got a group of former Afghan military veterans, elite forces, who want to set up a hostage-saving force in your city and want you to contract them to do that. And the police chiefs resoundingly said that would be a really bad idea, because they have an entirely different set of ideas about keeping the peace than does a domestic police force, and that the profit motivation would also be deeply problematic if you're looking at domestic operations. And I think that footage really helps crystallize the idea that these were just the wrong guys for the job.
In an article for the Washington Examiner and posted on Tiger Swan's own website, conservative columnist Tom Rogan advocated for the Tiger Swan CEO, Jim Reese, to head the FBI. Rogan writes, quote, "Reese would also innovate. Like any big organization, the FBI is ripe for reform. Establishing a successful global company after leaving the military, Reese would bring a blend of public and private sector thinking to bear. The Bureau might do well to transfer more lower-level counterterrorism duties away from agents and towards local police-dominated Joint Terrorism Task Force. Regardless, Reese despises static thinking." Your thoughts on this, Antonia?
Yeah, renowned civil rights attorney Jeffrey Haas, who is perhaps best known for leading the legal team that exposed the COINTELPRO program of the FBI over 13 years of litigation, is one of the lawyers who's representing the water protectors through the National Lawyers Guild. And I interviewed him at length about Tiger Swan and the leaked documents. And one of the biggest concerns that he raised was that what it appeared most disturbingly was that what Tiger Swan was doing was implementing a program of counterintelligence, surveillance, infiltration that reminded him quite extensively of the COINTELPRO program, which was, of course, found to be illegal. But that this is a private company doing what now the FBI and law enforcement cannot do. And the irony that now, James Reese apparently now wants to be the head of the FBI and bringing, these tactics back to the FBI, would be laughable if it wasn't actually unfolding right here.
So, Antonia, explain exactly what you understand Tiger Swan did in North Dakota as it took on the anti-Dakota Access Pipeline water protectors.
We know that they conducted extensive observation and infiltration, and that activity took place potentially through online hacking. They discuss getting into private Facebook pages and to use the information gained there to essentially gain information that protesters would not like to have brought out, and that is potentially illegal under cyber hacking laws. We also know that they did on-the-ground collecting of information through source reporting and informants. And I shouldn't keep saying this in the past tense. This is ongoing activities that we know that they're still doing at ongoing camps. We know that they at least tried to use that information and those informants to develop rifts between water protectors, particularly looking at native versus non-native in their words, and violent versus non-violent. We know that they worked closely with law enforcement, and that's another deep potential problem here from a legal perspective. There are regular reports within Tiger Swan's reporting of meeting with law enforcement officers across the state, but also federal agents as well. And that this level of sharing is deeply concerning because Tiger Swan also stated in the documents released that it was trying to provide information that would be used towards prosecution. And so Jeffrey Haas, the lawyer Jeffrey Haas, had said that these are basically tactics that law enforcement would not have been able to gain access to this information. It would be unconstitutional, yet the private security company is gaining access to the information, providing it to law enforcement, and then that could potentially use towards prosecuting water protectors. Again, in these, some 800 cases that were brought against water protectors against the Dakota Access Pipeline. And what would be even more problematic, and we don't know the answer to this because as I said, there was this extensive relationship between Tiger Swan, local, state, and even federal law enforcement, was if the information flow was going the other way. So if law enforcement was asking Tiger Swan to do things that law enforcement can't do, that would certainly be illegal, and that would be particularly problematic. The documents provide a lot of information, but they mostly sort of open the door to more questions that need to be answered from a legal perspective. And one of the attorneys at the Electronic Frontier Foundation told us, she thinks that subpoenas should be issued looking at least at this issue of the potential hacking of private Facebook pages, and that I think there is potentially a number of legal cases that could be brought, or at least more information that needs to be gained on exactly what Energy Transfer Partners was using Tiger Swan for, and potentially, like I said, what law enforcement was using Tiger Swan for, and what constitutional rights were being broken. As I said, the potential threats are freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of religion. We had people being surveilled by Tiger Swan and potentially infiltrated, in Chicago, far away from the pipeline. So the pipeline passes through Illinois. It doesn't pass through Chicago. But Tiger Swan had these, intense programs of observation, of trying to link. They talk about linking Black Lives Matter participants who had been at Standing Rock, or just people who are part of Black Lives Matter in Chicago, to 4 universities in the Chicago area, and making links between persons of interest in different institutions, and collating and gathering all this information. And all people were doing was exercising, their First Amendment right to free speech and freedom of association. So, these are all deeply troubling. I will say it was very important. I did a lot of interviews with people named in the documents, or people who were, at Standing Rock or involved in these protests. And I would say to the one, they said, we knew that there was surveillance happening. We certainly knew that there was a possibility of infiltration, but this does not make us, this doesn't scare us. This may make us feel creeped out, and it certainly is problematic, but we're going to keep organizing, and we think it's really important as well that the public hears that as well, that we want people to be involved in these resistance movements, and we're not going to be cowed by Tiger Swan's activities, because one of the pieces of information that came out in exposing COINTELPRO was that one of the key objectives of COINTELPRO was to create fear and distrust within government opposition movements, or within the Black Panther Party and other groups that would undermine those activities, and that just that fear that there's a FBI agent or a Tiger Swan agent behind every corner could stop people from wanting to participate and to trust each other and work together, and that everyone I interviewed wanted me to know that wasn't going to be their response to this information coming out.
Antonia, tell us what Kelly Hayes was accused of doing, hand-to-hand combat training, and also Joy Braun.
So Kelly Hayes is a pretty amazing story. I had found in the documents that Tiger Swan had reported in one of the documents that a unidentified member of the Black Panther Party from Chicago was conducting hand-to-hand combat operations in the Standing Rock camps, probably at Oseti-Sakwan, the largest camp. And I started interviewing people in Chicago, not even necessarily expecting that I was going to, find this person. I was doing an interview with Kelly Hayes, and I read her the date and I read her the description, and she said, that's got to be me. I'm sure that's me. But I was conducting self-defense classes for small groups of women and femme folk, and I'm sure that that's what they were talking about, she said, because there was nothing else even remotely similar taking place in the camp. And that, she said, disturbingly, that's not like those small groups of women and femme folk had been advertised on social media or even advertised in the camp. She said the only way that someone would know that those trainings were happening was if they were there on the ground. She said then what also makes it troubling is that the way, of course, it was reported, and that raises the implication that Tiger Swan was intentionally trying to make activities in the camp seem more dangerous, and as it was doing throughout, focusing in on people of color, and people who followed religions that they seemed to not, find settling, to focus in on the potential threat of those people. Hayes certainly found it disturbing to have this information reported on her, but she said a very powerful quote in response, which was, I think if they're spending all this time, all this money, all this energy on trying to figure out who we are and what we're doing, that's a sign of our power and that they're afraid of us.
And Joy Braun?
So Joy Braun, a member of the Lakota tribe and a representative of Indigenous Environmental Network, was credited with the very first idea of setting up a resistance camp to Dakota Access Pipeline in Standing Rock and outside of the reservation. And she was one of the first in, one of the very last out. She's also set up, or is a participant in, a new resistance camp that's in South Dakota, and it is to keep going with the energy against the Dakota Access Pipeline because there's ongoing lawsuits there against it, and to begin resistance to the Keystone XL expansion put forward by Trump. And so I had a long conversation with her about Tiger Swan and about the surveillance. And she said, first of all, we knew that we were being surveilled, of course, and potentially infiltrated, but we had no idea it was a paramilitary contractor like Tiger Swan, and that was deeply troubling. What was even more troubling, though, is that the final report that we had access to from April 11th said that they are monitoring the South Dakota camp as well, and that they have an informant within that camp. And again, what she said was, we sat around a campfire in the very beginning of the camp, in the very early days back in April, a year ago of the first camp.
We just have 30 seconds.
Saying, what would happen if they started treating us like they treat people in Afghanistan or people in Iraq? And what she said was, we will survive. We've survived before, we'll survive again, we'll survive Tiger Swan. And in one of her final statements to me, she said, Tiger Swan said in its report that we are really organized. Well, they're right. We are really organized.
Antonia Juhas, oil and energy journalist. Her latest piece we'll link to at Grist and Reveal. Paramilitary security tracked and targeted no-DAPL activists as jihadists show. She is the author of Black Tide, The Devastating Impact of the Gulf Oil Spill, and The Tyranny of Oil, the world's most powerful industry, and what we must do to stop it. To go to part one of our conversation with Antonia Juhas, go to democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.